A quiet island. A rented home surrounded by trees. Inside, a little boy sleeps as his mother serves dinner to the man he barely knows, his father. Hours later, the same walls are splattered with blood, bleach, and silence. The boy wakes up to ask, "What are you doing, Mom?" And she whispers, "Playing with paint." That single line would send chills through an entire nation. This is the Jeju Island murder that shocked South Korea, the case of Koh Yu-Jeong.
살인죄 책방인데 긴 접수하겠습니다. 수갑. 오전 10시 32분경으로 살인죄를 긴급 체포하겠습니다. 변명이 설명할 수 있고 불리한 짓을 거부할 수 있고 체포 정지를 신청할 수 있어요. 그런 적 없는데 우리가 당했는데 이렇게 체포 당할 만한 우리가 사유가 인정된다고
이건 뭐예요? 버리는 거예요?
예, 지금 아까 쓰레기 올라왔는데 일단 차에 타시죠. 납치 없는데 들어가세요. 어차피 들어가세요.
The evening of May 25th, 2019, started like any other Saturday. A father spoke excitedly on the phone with his own dad, barely able to contain his joy about finally reuniting with his young son after 2 long years of separation. That conversation happened around 8 o'clock in the evening. Just over an hour later, when his brother tried to reach him, the phone went straight to silence.
Dead.
Turned off. And that was the last moment anyone in the Kong family would ever hear from him again. What makes this disappearance so chilling is the timing. This wasn't supposed to be a day that ended in mystery. This was supposed to be a celebration. The man had been counting down the hours until he could wrap his arms around his child again, a little boy he hadn't seen since he was barely 3 years old. His family sat at home that weekend, phones in hand, waiting for updates that never arrived. They expected photos of a smiling father and son. They expected videos of a child's laughter, of catching up on 2 years of missed birthdays and milestones. Instead, they got nothing but an eerie, suffocating silence. 2 days crawled by with no word. By May 27th, the family knew something was catastrophically wrong. They contacted the authorities and reported him as a missing person. The search began immediately, and the first person they needed to speak with was obvious: his ex-wife, Koh Yu-Jeong. She was the mother of his son, and more importantly, she was the last person scheduled to see him alive. When they reached her by phone, her voice cracked with tears. She painted a horrific picture for them. According to her story, when they met up that Saturday, the man had sexually assaulted her. She claimed that when she fought back and resisted his advances, he panicked and ran away. She even had text messages to back up her story, showing her threatening to report him and his apologetic response. But the story got even darker. She told authorities that the man's own family had said he tried to take his own life just 2 hours after their exchange. The authorities asked her to come to the station for a formal statement. Her response? She couldn't. She had already left the island, back on the mainland. This is where the man's brother stepped in. Frustrated and suspicious, he traveled to the guest house where his brother, Koh Yu-Jeong, and their 5-year-old son were supposed to have spent their reunion weekend. He started knocking on doors and talking to neighbors. What he discovered next would blow this case wide open. The brother managed to obtain security camera footage from buildings near the guest house. The video showed 3 people walking into that guest house on May 25th. The missing man, Koh Yu-Jeong, and their young son. All 3 entered together. But the man never walked back out. Not once. The footage showed Koh Yu-Jeong and the child leaving the next day, May 26th. Then came May 27th, and this is where things got truly bizarre. Koh Yu-Jeong appeared on camera returning to the guest house alone. She went inside, stayed for a while, and then emerged carrying 2 large suitcases and 2 garbage bags, which she threw into a nearby bin. The brother immediately handed over everything to authorities. They tracked down the missing man's phone signal to an area miles away from the guest house, but found no sign of him. They also located his car, still sitting exactly where he'd parked it at a supermarket. The car hadn't moved an inch. The case shifted from a missing person investigation to something much darker, a suspected homicide. That changed on May 31st when authorities searched the guest house and performed a luminol test. The entire guest house lit up like a crime scene from a horror film. Blood traces were everywhere. The kitchen glowed with it. The bathroom, the living room, the bedroom. Every single room showed evidence that blood had been spilled there and then scrubbed away. Only 3 people had entered that guest house: the missing man, Koh Yu-Jeong, and their 5-year-old son. That left only one possible suspect. Authorities immediately traveled to Koh Yu-Jeong's home on the mainland in Cheongju. What they found inside made the case undeniable. Hidden among her belongings were weapons: 2 large knives and a handsaw. In her car, they discovered a blanket absolutely soaked with blood. They collected samples from everything and sent them to a laboratory. When the results came back, the blood belonged to the missing man. His blood was on the weapons in her house, on the blanket in her car, and all over that guest house. On June 1st, Koh Yu-Jeong was arrested. During interrogation, her story began to change. Now she admitted that when he tried to assault her, she had grabbed a knife and stabbed him. It was self-defense, she insisted. Based on this confession, she was charged with abandonment of a corpse, concealment of a corpse, and damage to a body. But then something inexplicable happened. The owner of the guest house was getting frustrated that their business had been shut down for days. They asked if they could clean the place, and the authorities agreed. Even though this was a fresh homicide investigation, they gave permission for it to be cleaned. Any evidence they'd missed was gone forever, washed away down drains and thrown into trash bags. While Koh Yu-Jeong sat in prison, her second husband came to visit. During one of these visits, she asked him a strange question. Had the authorities taken a pouch of hers? The question stuck in his mind. When he returned home, he searched through her belongings until he found the pouch. Inside was a prescription bottle for zolpidem, a powerful sleeping medication known by its brand name, Ambien. The prescription showed she'd been given enough pills for 7 days, filled just 1 week before the man went missing. Her husband took the pouch straight to authorities. They immediately pulled up the laboratory results from the blood samples. When they examined those results more carefully, something jumped out. The victim's blood contained high levels of zolpidem. He had been heavily drugged. This single discovery obliterated her entire self-defense story. Why would a man planning to assault someone take a powerful sleeping pill right before the attack? The presence of that medication pointed to only one conclusion: someone had given it to him without his knowledge. But the story goes deeper than a single weekend gone wrong. As authorities dug into the background, they uncovered a bitter 2-year custody battle. The couple had divorced in 2017 when their son was barely 3 years old. The entire custody battle existed for one reason: Koh Yu-Jeong refused to let the father see their child. She had primary custody, but he was legally entitled to visitation. She simply wouldn't allow it. She wouldn't return his calls or texts. When he showed up at her door, she wouldn't answer. For 2 solid years, she kept that child away from his father. So the father went to court, filing complaint after complaint, not trying to take custody away, but simply begging the legal system to force her to follow the rules. He just wanted to see his son. Despite 2 years of being blocked at every turn, he never stopped fighting. He held on to hope that someday he would be reunited with his child. Koh Yu-Jeong was born on February 2nd, 1983, on Jeju Island. She grew up as the oldest of 3 children with a fairly unremarkable childhood. Jeju Island has a population of around 700,000, but maintains a tight-knit community feeling. When this savage crime exploded onto the news, the entire island went into shock. People gathered in the streets demanding justice. The chaos was unlike anything the island had seen. During her school years, people who knew Koh Yu-Jeong described her as completely ordinary, with a sweet, lively personality. There were no red flags, no warnings of darkness beneath that pleasant surface. At university, while volunteering with a community group, she met the man who would become her husband and victim. Their relationship started beautifully. They volunteered together, traveled together, and spent 5 years building what seemed like a loving relationship. On June 11th, 2013, they married. But their honeymoon revealed the first terrifying cracks. At the airport preparing to board their flight home, Koh Yu-Jeong suddenly remembered she'd forgotten to buy something and took off running toward the duty-free shops. When boarding calls started and her husband gently suggested they should head to the gate, everything exploded. She completely lost control, screaming at him in the middle of the airport, causing a massive scene. Then she refused to get on the airplane. They missed their flight entirely because of her tantrum. After being denied boarding, the husband walked back to find his wife calmly browsing the shops as if nothing had happened. The screaming meltdown might as well have never occurred. This wasn't the woman he thought he'd married. When they finally made it home, both enrolled in graduate programs. The stress of studies combined with tight finances and an already fracturing relationship pushed them to their limits. Then came the pregnancy, completely unplanned and unexpected, making an already bad situation catastrophically worse. After she gave birth, Koh Yu-Jeong became increasingly irritable and aggressive. Her mood swings intensified. Her outbursts became more frequent and violent. By 2016, the husband filed for divorce, citing spousal abuse as the reason. Yet when the divorce was finalized in 2017, she was awarded primary custody of their son. The reason? Money. The father was struggling financially, and the court decided Koh Yu-Jeong was in a better position to provide for the child. For 2 solid years, she kept him away from his child until he filed a formal legal complaint for violating his parental rights. During this process, he learned that Koh Yu-Jeong had already remarried and moved to the mainland with her new husband, leaving their son behind with her parents. Learning this devastated him. He didn't care that she'd moved on, but she'd abandoned their child and relocated without even telling him. He filed a civil lawsuit. Shortly before the murder weekend, the court ruled that the father must be allowed to see his son at least twice a month. At first, she didn't show up to any of the 3 court hearings and was fined each time. Then, without warning, she did a complete 180-degree turn. She sent the father a text message suggesting that the 3 of them spend an entire weekend together. The father didn't hesitate. After 2 years of legal battles and heartbreak, he jumped at this opportunity. They arranged to meet at a theme park on Jeju Island. The day was perfect. All 3 spent hours together, laughing and enjoying the rides. Everything seemed wonderful. Eventually, they left to go to the guest house in Junyup. On the way, they stopped at a supermarket to pick up supplies for dinner and food for the weekend. Security cameras captured all 3 entering the guest house together, but those cameras never caught the father walking back out. As authorities dug deeper into Koh Yu-Jeong's activities, they made a chilling discovery about her internet search history. Shortly after the father won his civil lawsuit, she had researched disturbing topics online: bone weight, fatal doses of nicotine, salpetum, and blood stain. These weren't casual searches. These were the searches of someone planning something horrific. Authorities pieced together a timeline of her movements. On May 22nd, 3 days before the reunion weekend, she was captured on camera shopping at a supermarket on Jeju Island, purchasing a saw, acid, rubber gloves, duct tape, and other tools. This wasn't someone buying supplies for a family weekend. This was someone purchasing a murder kit. After leaving the guest house on May 27th with those suitcases and garbage bags, she went to a nearby clinic for treatment for an injury on her right hand. The next day, May 28th, cameras caught her at a supermarket returning items she'd purchased, items likely used in the murder. The footage shows her looking completely normal, not nervous or guilty, just like someone running mundane errands. Meanwhile, pieces of her victim's body could have been in her vehicle parked outside. After returning those items, she went to another store and purchased disposable gloves, a travel bag, and 30 garbage bags. That evening at 8:30, she boarded a ferry heading toward Wando Island. Security cameras on that ferry captured something haunting: Koh Yu-Jeong throwing several plastic bags over the boat's railing into the dark ocean water below. Authorities determined she disposed of body parts in at least 3 different locations: the ferry route and her father's house in Gimpo. The Coast Guard launched a search operation along the ferry route that lasted 3 solid weeks, searching waters and monitoring shores for anything that might wash up. They found nothing. To this day, the victim's body has never been recovered. After the ferry arrived at Wando around 11 that night, Koh Yu-Jeong continued to her father's house in Gimpo, arriving around 4 in the morning. She'd apparently thrown some remains overboard but brought other parts with her. According to the investigation, she continued mutilating the body at her father's house. She'd even ordered an electric saw delivered there, which authorities later recovered. On May 31st, cameras caught her disposing of a white garbage bag at her father's apartment. That bag was traced to an incineration plant, then tracked to another facility. Authorities found bone fragments they thought were human, but testing revealed they were animal bones. Nobody knows what was actually in that bag. From all the evidence, authorities reconstructed what they believed happened that final night. After stopping at the supermarket for supplies, the three arrived at the guest house where Koh Yu-Jeong prepared curry dinner. They all sat together eating and talking, the father probably feeling happier than he'd felt in years. But Koh Yu-Jeong had laced his portion with salpeterum. Shortly after finishing dinner, the drug began working. The father started feeling drowsy and went to lie down. Then he woke up to unimaginable horror, a knife being plunged into his chest. In those first seconds of confused panic, he saw who was attacking him: the mother of his child, his ex-wife. He rolled off the bed trying to escape and started crawling toward the door, but blood was pouring out with terrifying speed. Koh Yu-Jeong stabbed him 2 more times. Unable to fight anymore, he collapsed and died on that guest house floor. The father who'd fought for 2 years just to see his son, who jumped at the chance for this reunion weekend, was gone. But the horror didn't end with his death. Koh Yu-Jeong dismembered his body, cut him into pieces, and disposed of those pieces in at least 3 separate locations, scattering him so thoroughly he might never be found. And their 5-year-old son was present in that guest house when it happened. The psychological damage that child will carry is unimaginable. After Koh Yu-Jeong's arrest, suspicions emerged about another death that had occurred just 3 months earlier. Her 4-year-old stepson had died under mysterious circumstances. Her second husband had told authorities he'd woken to find his son unresponsive, not breathing, with blood coming from his mouth. The cause of death was suffocation. At the time, nobody suspected Koh Yu-Jeong. The death was written off as tragic accident. After her arrest for murder, the boy's father filed a formal complaint demanding a new investigation. What they found was damning: another search in her history for death by suffocation. According to her second husband, she didn't even attend her stepson's funeral, a source of bitter arguments between them. Their relationship had been violent as well, with frequent explosive altercations. The husband claimed she'd thrown scissors at him, hurled dishes, and even lunged at him with a weapon. She denied everything, but the pattern was impossible to ignore. Her first husband had divorced her, citing spousal abuse, and now her second husband described the same violence. On the night the stepson died, the husband claimed Koh Yu-Jeong had made him a drink. After consuming it, he became extremely tired and went to bed unusually early. While he slept, his son died. The theory was that she drugged the drink so he'd fall into deep sleep, then suffocated the 4-year-old boy. Her defense? She claimed her husband had poor sleeping habits and must have accidentally suffocated his own son. She was eventually charged with her stepson's murder as well. Her trial began on August 12, 2019. Initially, she hired 5 lawyers, but before the trial even started, resigned, refusing to continue representing her and citing psychological pressure. The truth is they were likely receiving massive backlash from the public. This case had exploded across South Korea. The media covered every development. The island of Jeju, especially, was in an uproar. This woman had murdered her ex-husband in front of their 5-year-old son and was accused of murdering her 4-year-old stepson. The rage was palpable. During the trial, prosecutors painted a clear picture of premeditated murder. They had mountains of evidence: the victim's blood in her car, weapons in her apartment covered in his blood, the prescription for zolpidem filled 1 week before the murder, and laboratory results showing high levels of that drug in the victim's bloodstream. The prosecution hammered their case with one undeniable fact: If this was self-defense, why would the victim have sleeping drugs in his system? The zolpidem evidence demolished her story completely. The only way that drug ended up in his system was if someone slipped it to him without his knowledge. What makes this case mind-boggling is the contradiction. She planned this murder meticulously, researching fatal doses, buying murder tools, dismembering the body, cleaning so thoroughly that only chemical testing revealed blood. She scattered body parts across multiple locations. Every step showed careful planning. But then she left a blood-soaked blanket in her car and weapons covered in his blood in her apartment. The evidence against her was overwhelming. The prosecution brought up her disturbing internet searches. Her defense had explanations for everything, even if absurd. For bone weight, they argued she wanted to make bone broth. For the zolpidem search, they claimed curiosity about a K-pop scandal, even though she had an actual prescription. For fatal dose of nicotine, they said she worried about her husband smoking. For blood stain, they argued menstrual bleeding. The defense's main strategy was emotional appeal. They argued that Koh Yu-Jeong was now a sole parent, and imprisoning her would devastate her child. The prosecution challenged her entire sexual assault story, arguing the text messages were completely fabricated. On September 30th, Koh Yu-Jeong took the stand. Through tears, she begged for mercy, insisting she'd been the victim of attempted assault and that the death was a terrible accident while defending herself. On February 20th, 2020, the verdict came, convicted of murder, dismemberment, and concealment of a corpse. Acquitted of her stepson's death due to insufficient evidence. Sentence: life in prison. Nobody was satisfied. Koh Yu-Jeong immediately appealed. The prosecution also appealed, wanting the death penalty. The victim's brother stated he wanted death penalty, that even life imprisonment felt too lenient. A petition demanding the death penalty gathered over 210,000 signatures. A second trial took place in July. When the verdict came back, the original sentence was upheld. Both parties appealed to the Supreme Court. The result was exactly the same: life imprisonment. The sentence was now final. Koh Yu-Jeong would spend the rest of her natural life behind bars. The victim's funeral was held over 3 days starting August 27, 2019. But there was no body to bury, only 7 strands of his hair and some clothing. That's all they had left. The police investigation came under heavy criticism. About 60 residents marched to the station protesting the failures. An official inquiry found they'd failed to preserve the crime scene properly, allowing it to be cleaned too early. They'd failed to identify the zolpidem on their own. The second husband found that. They hadn't even obtained the crucial security footage. The victim's brother did that. When examined, authorities hadn't discovered much on their own. After Koh Yu-Jeong's sentencing, her second husband filed for divorce and demanded alimony. In October 2020, their divorce was finalized. She was ordered to pay 30 million won, roughly $32,000. This case sent shockwaves throughout South Korea. Over 200,000 signatures demanding death represents the collective rage this case inspired. The crime was savage enough, but committing it in front of her 5-year-old child made it exponentially worse. Nobody knows where that child is now. He's lost both parents. His father is dead, scattered in pieces, never to be recovered. His mother is in prison for life. The boy would be around 10 or 11 now. The details about his current situation have been kept private. Nobody knows exactly what the child saw that night. Did she put him in another room? Was he asleep? The specifics have never been disclosed, probably to protect whatever remains of his privacy. But he was in that guest house. He probably heard things. The trauma will follow him forever. The question haunting many is whether Koh Yu-Jeong killed her stepson too. The timing is suspicious. The boy died 3 months before she murdered her ex-husband. Cause: suffocation. She had death by suffocation in her search history. Her husband claimed she'd given him a drink that made him unusually tired before his son died. The pattern matches exactly what she did to her ex-husband. She was acquitted due to lack of evidence, but the circumstances point strongly toward guilt. A 4-year-old suffocated with a woman who had a violence history and suspicious searches as the only other adult besides the sleeping father. It's hard not to draw conclusions. The brutality, meticulous planning, complete lack of remorse, and casual way she disposed of evidence paint the picture of someone truly dangerous. Someone capable of unspeakable evil. Someone who can take a life and return items to a store the next day as if nothing happened. This case remains one of the most shocking crimes in South Korea's recent history. A father who fought 2 years just to see his son, who finally got that chance, only to be drugged and stabbed to death by the mother of his child. A 5-year-old who lost both parents in the worst way imaginable. A 4-year-old stepson who may have also been murdered. The devastation radiates outward, touching multiple families and an entire community. The only justice is that Koh Yu-Jeong will never walk free again. She'll spend every remaining day in a prison cell, locked away from society. She'll never hurt another person. She'll grow old and die behind bars, which is exactly what she deserves. The father she murdered never got to watch his son grow up, never got those graduations or weddings, never became a grandfather. His life was stolen in the most brutal way imaginable, and his body was scattered so completely that his family couldn't even bury him. All they had was hair and clothing to mourn over. This is what happens when custody battles turn deadly, when violence escalates unchecked, and when someone believes they can literally get away with murder. Koh Yu-Jeong almost succeeded in disposing of evidence so thoroughly that the crime might never have been solved. But thanks to the victim's brother, the second husband, and the trail of evidence she couldn't quite cover completely, justice eventually prevailed. She's behind bars for life, and the truth is now known to the world. That's the only consolation in a case this dark and devastating.